It's a orange juice.
What's up everyone, it's OJ. We're getting a really interesting challenge, Retro Royale. The first entry is going to be free of charge, and any other entry after that will only cost you 10 gems. The rewards are about 4 times smaller than a classic challenge, but the rewards are potentially way better, at least on the first completion. Retro Royale means that you play it like it was in April, so this is when the mortar was just released. There aren't as many win conditions with 42 cards. You're limited to a lot of things. There aren't enough cards for a good spell bait deck, legendaries, roll giant, and furnace don't exist yet. What a time to be alive! So the only difference is that these cards will have today's balances. So back then a goblin barrel used to cost 4 elixir and deal damage to the tower upon impact. It'll now have today's balances and mechanics, where it'll cost 3 elixir and not deal damage landing on the tower. This applies to all of the cards. In this era, win conditions you can use will be mass spawners, giant or golem lightning, defensive rocket spell cycle, giant skeleton with balloon, P.E.K.K.A with the wizard, prince, X-bow, mortar, and of course, the classic hog freeze. In this meta, the wizard was really good because everybody ran minion horde and barbarians. There are actually enough cards to play Jason's deck, but I think with the advancement of the game and how players have learned more advanced ways of playing, there are more efficient decks out there. Plus the elixir collector costs 6 elixir, so it's not quite as viable. It really ups the average cost of the Jason deck. So the system is really different. The max wins is 6. The prizes laid out are pretty sweet. At just 1 win, you're awarded 10 gems. Then at 2 wins, you get a dinky silver chest of the arena that you're currently in. 3 wins, you get a gold chest. At 5 wins, you get a magical chest. Then at 6 wins, you get 3,000 gold. And of course you get the 6-win chest of 600 gold and 25 cards. Really the jackpot is at 5 wins. 15% of the player pool will reach 6 wins, and 23% of the player pool will win a magical chest. Winning this challenge at 6 wins is over 20 times easier than reaching 12 wins. Alright, so joining us today is Wings from Orange Juice. Tell me a little bit about yourself and how long you've been playing.
What's up? I've been playing for about a year, since
April.
April.
Jinx.
Yep.
How many challenge cards do you have?
I think I have about 280k right now.
That's pretty solid. So you reached number 1 last season under Kid Kid.
Yes, I did.
Yeah, you used that hog deck. Tell me a little bit about that hog giant deck that you were using. And I noticed that it kind of evolved a bit too, like you started using skeletons.
Yeah, before that, like the season before, I used the same deck but with guards instead of skeletons.
Yeah.
I still think guards are good, but I think their buff just made them completely overpowered, so I started using them. I started using log instead of ice spirit because everyone was using like goblin barrel, spell bait, and it was really annoying. So I just put in 3 spells, so I pretty much always win against that, and I faced a lot of it, so it was helpful.
So let's say there isn't like any spell bait meta, and you didn't have to use the log and you never needed to worry about that. What would you put in place of that?
Either arrows or ice spirit. It had ice spirit before and it worked.
Yeah,
worked well.
That makes sense. Like the ice spirit kind of cycles everything, but why arrows if spell bait isn't an issue?
If there's not a lot of spell bait, I'd go ice spirit.
Okay, I've actually been using a variant of that with goblins. It's working pretty well for me. Well, how would you feel about this deck if it was in January's meta? Basically the only thing that you can't replace would be arrows and the log. Like let's say like none of the cards in there exist.
Yeah, you would just have fireball and arrows, I guess. Everything but ice spirit, and then you would replace ice spirit with like, I have no idea, maybe goblins, I guess.
Yeah, that kind of makes sense. Like back then there'd be like goblins to take care of like P.E.K.K.A or prince, because there wasn't that many win conditions back then, I guess. One question that's asked a lot is, how do you deal with elixir collector for this kind of deck?
So what I do is I just fireball it, and then I'd wait for them to drop something big. If they don't drop something big, I just go like hog, because if they don't drop something big, then they don't have an advantage. So I just go hog. If they drop something like a golem after they pump, I just go giant at the bridge with like minions.
Okay, that makes sense. So you would always fireball the elixir if you're sitting at 10.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But if you're not sitting at 10, then it's just a waste because you're going to be down even more.
Okay. So what do you usually use as a starting move? Let's say you have a giant musketeer and a hog and zap or whatever. Would you put the giant or the musketeer in the back? Or would you rush with a hog?
I never put giant in the back. I usually don't put musketeer. If they don't do anything, I just go hog, see what they have.
Okay, that's as the starting move to kind of
really gonna hurt me.
Reveal their deck.
Yeah.
So why don't you like playing giant in the back? I used to see giant played in the back all the time in the giant poison meta.
You can just get counterattacked so hard, and then you have nothing to support it with, because the deck is like 0 defense. You need like musketeer with it. Also, if they have Expo, you're dead.
Do you think you could rush the Expo with your hog if you didn't have a giant in rotation?
Yeah, but I think hog is a lot easier to kill than giant.
Yeah, that's true. And they'll always have supporting units for the Expo, like Inferno, or even like skeletons will just shred them away.
But this deck doesn't really have a problem with Expo, because you have 2 defense targeting things.
So when do you play the hog? I think you told me that you only play it during double elixir time?
The hog? Not really. Yeah. I play it, if they have Inferno Tower, I'll just play it by itself because it's +1. And then I'll play like giant in the back after they use it. They're in a weird situation where like, what are they supposed to do, you know?
So what if they have barbarians for your giant? I notice you don't really have much. Like there's the musketeer, which
you have
doesn't
fireball.
exactly
So against barbs, I usually just hog them out if they don't have another defense. That usually works.
For this deck against Jason's deck, how would it kind of match up?
I don't think Jason's deck is very good anymore because like barbarians are just not good. If you just save your fireball for minion horde and barbarians, you just kill him on offense. Honestly, he doesn't have much else other than that.
Right, but with Jason's deck, it has barbarians, minion horde, and elixir collector. And you said you would fireball the elixir collector at 10 elixir?
Yeah.
So if you don't have fireball in rotation, then you send in your...
you can always cycle back to it. It's really cheap. Because you just fireball and you wouldn't go on offense. Or you would just hog and like skeletons or something.
Yeah, I actually just noticed it's a 3 elixir deck. It actually is really cheap.
Really cheap.
I mean, there wasn't really a concept of cycling back then, so it kind of made sense in that meta.
Yeah, no one really knew what to play back then. Like, there wasn't really a meta or anything. People were just trying out new stuff, and then Giant became popular because of that.
So how do you use the Giant?
So,
in this deck?
The Giant, you can use it for soaking damage, and you can use it just to play at the bridge. Kind of depends like what they have. So if they have Spellbait, I'll use Hog and then Giant. If they have like Golem, I'll just Giant at the bridge and then Golem in the deck on the other side.
So would you go all in if they Golem?
If they Golem, yeah, I do.
On the opposite lane, obviously, right?
Yeah. Because I have no
So it's
defense.
basically a base race at that point?
Mm-hmm. I mean, I can usually do, if I can defend it, if they have like nothing supporting it, I'll defend it. If they have troops defending it, troops supporting it, I'll just give it up and then counterattack.
So how do you defend it? Because it's a really cheap deck. You have a Musketeer, skeletons, minions. You don't have a cannon or anything to pull the Golem. How does it kind of fare against that?
Well, you have to take a tower. You have to take at least 2. If they go Golem, you go Giant, like I said, on the opposite lane. You should be able to take the tower from that. So when it's coming down your lane, I just go Musketeer, and then Skeletons, and then nothing else because they'll just Lightning, and you'll be dead. If they Lightning you, then you just wait for everything to lock on, and just Minions it. Just kill the supporting troops, and then kill the Golem. It'll take your tower, but then you have Minions, and then you can support it with Giant, and take their other tower.
Yeah, that makes sense. I really like Skeletons because for 1 elixir, it's almost 300 DPS.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
For this kind of deck, do you focus more on defending or do you kind of just go really aggressive?
It's pretty aggressive. Like, there's not much cards you have to play defense. You have Musketeer, Skeletons, and Minions. That's it. I use Hog a lot just to use it, like just to throw it at the bridge because it gets a response out of them, and then you can just defend with Musketeer and then just get value on Musketeer and then go Giant. That's pretty much what I do with it.
If they have a cannon, which is only 3 elixir, what would your next rotation be? Would you kind of fireball that, or would you just stop hogging at the bridge?
Yeah, I would not hog at the bridge if they have cannon. If they have like a really cheap hog deck, I'd split Skeletons in the back and then Giant in the back. It's the only time I'll go Giant because they don't have like a big push to come at me. I'll go Giant in the back, and then if they go hog in the opposite lane, I'll go Musketeer on the same side as Giant, but like it can shoot their hog and then it'll walk to support the Giant. So it can defend and then support the Giant.
So why would you split Skeletons in the back? 2 Skeletons in both lanes don't really do much. A lot of people feel like it's a waste, but you're gonna have a really good explanation for this. I
do it whenever I can because no one really pushes into it, right? You're not gonna push a hog into 2 Skeletons, or then you have to log it. You have to waste the elixir to get rid of the Skeletons. So by doing that, it just denies them from putting troops at the bridge.
That makes sense. I actually wouldn't want to put a hog into 2 Skeletons because it's like, yeah, my hog's gonna get it's gonna get a couple hits,
Yeah,
but then
it's
I might have
annoying.
to use Zap or Log for 0.5 Elixir. That's a really good point you bring up. Do you really have any trouble against other decks like a Prince or a P.E.K.K.A deck?
P.E.K.K.A is simple, but it's not unwinnable. You really don't want to use Giant at all versus P.E.K.K.A. You just want to use Hog, unless they just P.E.K.K.A in the back. Then I'll just go Giant at the bridge on the other side. Usually they have Furnace with P.E.K.K.A, so I just Fireball that over and over again. If they don't play it, you just play Hog. Not really Giant.
What if they counter the Hog with the P.E.K.K.A?
With Furnace? P.E.K.K.A?
Yeah.
Well, it's like a -3 trade, and
but now you have to
can
deal
use
with it, and you only have Musketeer and
you
minions.
have Musketeer and Skeletons. That's all you need.
Okay, but what if that P.E.K.K.A is supported with, like, say, I don't know, a Bomber?
You probably just minions the Bomber, and then just Skeletons the P.E.K.K.A. Just if it's supported with anything, you just kill the support. Usually.
Alright, so let's say it's supported by a Wizard. You can't minion that.
Well, you can Fireball it, and then Skeleton it, and then minions.
You mean Skeleton to surround the Wizard, right?
Yep.
What I would personally do is I would probably panic, put down a Giant to tank the Wizard, and then I'd put minions on top of the Wizard, just because the Wizard's targeting my Giant now, but then my Giant would take a lot of damage from that.
You could also do that, but the Giant will just die.
So, yeah, ever since this deck has become meta, what common mistakes do you see really often with players that use this?
I said this a lot, like putting Giant and Hog in the same lane, just YOLOing it. Yeah, it does a lot of damage if they can't really defend it, but it just lets them stack up stuff, and then you're just dead off counter push.
I noticed you did that to me, and I could never, ever counter push, because you never gave me that opportunity to stack stuff. That was really annoying.
If you take a tower down and you just need the other tower, it's the best deck to get it because you can just put Hog and Giant in the middle and it's really hard to stop. But that's only if you're in overtime and you need a tower. Otherwise, I wouldn't do it.
Yeah. So would you put the Giant first and then the Hog, or would you kind of put the Hog on the bridge?
If you took a tower, like if the tower's down, you put Giant in the middle and then Hog on the side, on the river.
I feel like it's a little scary to stack them all at once, just if they have like splash units.
Yeah, that's not what you want to do because you can just pull everything and then none of them will go.
Yeah, and then they would just pull it to the other side. Cool, so that wraps it up for today. Thanks for joining me, Wings.
Thank you.
If you match up against this deck, it's really weird. You'll want to do stuff you usually wouldn't do, like rush at the bridge, just because it lacks defense. Now, Wings mentioned that Ice Spirit would be a good substitute for the Log, but that didn't exist yet. And at the time of interviewing him, I couldn't tell him what the Retro Royale challenge was. He just thought I really didn't want to use the Log. He also suggested arrows, but that's not quite necessary because there's already Zap. At this point, Goblin Gang, Princess, and Dark Goblin don't exist yet, so Log bait is not an issue. Speaking from my experiences in April, the most powerful cards were P.E.K.K.A, Prince, Hog, and Golem. This is why I chose Goblins. They can pull P.E.K.K.A and Prince, they can shred the Hog, and they can destroy the Golem if it's ignored. I'm really glad that Wings agreed with me when I theoretically asked him what he would sub for the Log in January's meta. Thanks for watching. Stay tuned for more quality OJ.